culmination of the schism in the Democratic Party over Bernie versus Hillary.
Yeah.
Will, you were there. What was the vibe at the convention?
Well, a lot of it had to do with the California delegation, and the California delegation had a private party before each of the nights. It started out Monday night, and some of the delegation, and it was an open bar, and some of the delegation were, as we say, overserved, and some of them were drunk on the floor, and that might have had something to do with it. But it was a competition to see who could be the Berniest, and the California guys were very, very Bernie, and even Bernie himself was disqualified in an early round of who was the Berniest. So it was and this is not the first time this happened. I mean, in 2008, there were Hillary supporters who had T-shirts that said Puma on it, and the Puma stood for Party Unity My Ass. So right. I mean, this is the Democrats. They always do this. I thought that Sarah Silverman actually handled it best. It said you're being ridiculous.
What does she say?
To have Sarah Silverman save the Democratic Party. So all of us comedians should be very, very proud.
As a comedian and a Jew, to see Al Franken and Sarah Silverman up there sharing the podium, that was a heart-wrenching moment. For
However, don't you think that nobody gets as butthurt as a burner? I mean, my take on it is that they were infuriated by the comment. Get over it, or ridiculous.
I was still.
I didn't know what
she said. She said to the people who are sort of holding out and shouting over candidates. There's a lot of that going on, and she said you're being ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Verbatim. That is what she said. And if I'm not mistaken,
especially the first night, they were booing anybody who mentioned Hillary.
They were booing Elizabeth Warren, for God's sakes. I mean, and people are just getting crazy. It's like they're eating their own tails at this point. I don't understand why party unity is so difficult, and how Hillary, as difficult as she is as a candidate. It's a great moment. This is a lifelong dedicated Democrat who's proven herself over and over and over again. It's the first woman nominated for president. It's a big moment. Right. And these people are fucking it up for us. Right. And it's making and some of these people are people I love and have actually given birth to. Right. And it's difficult.
That sort of limits the field.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. And I voted for Bernie in the primary here in California, but there is such a thing as reality that does intercede in our lives, no matter how hard some of us try to keep it from getting in there.
Well, it's these people who think that there's not a dime's worth of difference between them. No, that's bullshit. I mean, the difference, maybe she's not perfect, but it's the difference between getting a cold and getting Ebola.
Yes,
all right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I find most frustrating when talking to Bernie Sanders, the hardcore fans, that nobody that is attempting to have a rational discussion with the hardcore burners is saying that Hillary is perfect. I'm sure there are some people out there, but a lot of people recognize,
also they're holding a lot of stuff from her husband against her too.
Right, which
that's difficult. I struggle with that as well. I mean, there's no.
Well, I have issues with Marla Maples that I still hold against Donald Trump. So.
But what about this idea that to be supporting Bernie at this point is just sort of a badge of white privilege? I
would probably agree with that. Rather than going to the racial lines, I view it as an insistence that the Blackhawks still have a shot at the Cup this year. Let me tell you, and I am a big fan. But let me tell any other Hawks fans out there, any other fellow Chicagoans, we're out. The season has actually been over for a month. We did
but
not.
They were the best team, man.
Well, I know. and we still are, but just cupless this year. So, and that's the thing. There comes a time, even Bernie Sanders at the convention, which I
shed some tears
think is why Will is saying, he proved that he's not the Berniest of the Bernies.
Because he's a grown-up and he understands that everybody's sitting around going, wah, 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 I want it the way I want it, and I want it to be perfect. It's ridiculous.
I really believe that most people don't. They're looking at what's in front of them and not the whole picture. Like we were talking about history. The way our United States is built and the way things are going, the way they put in NAFTA. NAFTA was supposed to help bring in more business and everything. Also, it killed jobs. They don't. I mean, there's pros and cons to just NAFTA. Now they want to go to the EU. The EU doesn't want the United States. And the reason why the deal doesn't go through is because we have too many GMOs in our food. They don't want that over there in their country. There are certain things that they will not even allow to cross that line. And you say, oh, we're going to bring more jobs. The people need to understand that we when our the corporations and everybody, and we cut these deals, it was supposed to be cut with Canada and Mexico and everyone. It on one hand, the deal did great things for us, as far as we had oil deals that went pretty well, and it did bring some jobs by opening up, but it also killed a lot of our manufacturing right here in the United States. It killed farm jobs and farmers in Mexico. This killed their business because they were now depending upon us, and yet they blamed Bill and said that and Obama and those guys, but it was started by Reagan actually, who brought in NAFTA, and I think that they keep saying that Bernie was going to do things for. You have to look at. We have to bring a lot of those deals they voted for. They voted for a lot of the stuff that has happened today that killed jobs because they thought that Bernie says that NAFTA is a bad deal. Well, it has to be restructured, and the ITT is the TTIP.
And who's going to do that? Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Who's going to be able to restructure NAFTA? Who's going to be able to sit down?
The only thing I was going to say to that is that Donald, he's pointed stuff out. That's all he's done. He can point out the bad, but he has no solutions.
Answers. No.
He has none.
But believe him, he'll fix it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can throw up. What they should have said, as soon as he said he was going to build a wall, they should have threw the guy out.
Yep.
Threw him smooth out of just said, man, you know what, you're a nut. Throw him out.
Yeah.
Okay, because and that's what the spread of the fear. Then you went after the Muslims and all this. This is your problem. No, these are people cutting deals and cutting out the American people and sending jobs other places. They're worried about shareholders. If you understand that our society, the salaries have stagnated since 1971. They have not grown. Yeah. So there's somebody's behind that. That just didn't happen. Someone cut a deal. Lobbyists made sure that you keep this the way it is.
Well, and that's, for me, one of the most fascinating things about, considering all the rhetoric he's been spewing on the campaign trail so far, that Donald Trump picked Indiana Governor Mike Pence to be his running mate after already, saying that, TPP is horrible, even though Pence voted for it. Blaming Mexico for stealing the jobs and everything else that went with the Carrier air conditioning factory, which was located in Indiana. And Pence is just kind of like rolling over on everything. Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah, I don't really quite. I can't comprehend him fully. I don't know what he's about and what he stands for, any more than I know what Trump is about, but
Pence, though, at least it's easier to figure out what he's all about because he has served in Congress, he has served as a governor, and it turns out that pretty much everything he's about is horrible in terms of reproductive rights, voting.
But don't you feel like he's just sort of the dummy that's standing next to Trump? I mean, does even Trump care what Mike Pence is about?
Well, when you say dummy, like in the ventriloquism or in the Dan Quayle, as long as we're talking about dummies from Indiana.
I think we can borrow from both categories in this state. I mean, does anybody care who Trump is running with? Does Trump even care who he's running with? Is that a political team?
I think to a degree, and I've said this multiple times here on the show before the selection was made, and I have to start with the disclaimer. I am not advocating violence. I am not advocating assassination. But before a vice presidential nominee was chosen, I was a firm believer that whoever was on the short list was probably asking themselves, well, realistically, how long till someone shoots him and I get to be president?
Yeah.
And so I think, the people who do care about Mike Pence, are the ones who are asking that question. Mm-hmm. If and when Donald Trump gets assassinated, is this the guy we want running the show? And he's just like horribly right wing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the one saving grace, at least from my perspective, is that he's pretty bad at it. He tried to pass a religious freedom law to suspend any protections from LGBTQ individuals. And after a lot of people protested, boycotts were threatened.
Yes.
He then threw in an amendment saying, except you just can't use this law to discriminate against gay people, which is kind of the whole purpose of the law, although they won't say that. Yeah. But interesting. Speaking of interesting laws, Will, your former home state of Wisconsin and my sister's current home state of North Carolina, both this week had federal judges throw out some restrictive voting laws that the states had passed.
Yay!
Well, Scott Walker. Anytime Scott Walker suffers a loss, it's good for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
An angel gets their wings.
He was the guy who, at one of the debates, said that he would be able to face down ISIS the same way he did the Wisconsin Teachers Union. Wow.
And make them all hide out in a hotel across the border?
Yeah. So I hope that it holds. They threw one out in Texas with the redistricting, but I haven't heard anything since then.
I mean, they've been having that battle, about the voting rights for years. Since our parents were, and to finally get something like this, especially coming out of North Carolina, that's been a battle for a long time.
Well, what was it, last year or 2 years ago when the Supreme Court struck down certain provisions of the Voting Rights Act, saying, we can trust these southern states now.
Sure we can.
And as soon as they repealed, like the voter ID laws started coming in and closing down early voting and basically anything to make it difficult for minorities, old people, specifically older minorities.
Let's fight this battle all over again, shall we?
Yeah, well, and history does repeat itself if you don't stand up to it. It will definitely come back because people say, well, you got to do things the way they used to do things. Let's do it, the way we used to.
Yeah.
But Will, you were at both conventions. What would you say your biggest takeaway from the Democratic convention was?
Well, those little plugs that trendsters, hipsters put in their earlobes, and then they put in bigger ones and bigger ones and bigger ones?
Those are called gauges, yes.
Yeah. You saw more of those at the Democratic convention than
Did you actually see any at the Republican convention, not counting like going to Starbucks to get a coffee on your way to the convention?
No, not a single one, and a lot more heels and bigger hair at the Republican convention.
Oh, wow.
Democratic convention had more gray ponytails.
Yes, God, yes.
Which watching
We've
both
got
on
one
TV
here right now.
Yes, we do. Until I come up with a better closer than my joke about donating it to Locks for Love. But the life of a comedian, This is going to sound like a goofy question. I actually am wondering though, because I watched both on TV. Which convention would you say had weirder hats?
I think that it was a tie. It was what I would be interested in seeing is hearing your perception, because there were 15,000 journalists, and I think the Democrats had like